Hello, I'm Robert Kelly, and today on Record All Monsters, Terror of Mechagodzilla, the ultimate Showa Godzilla movie in every way.
We'd like you to listen to this carefully. It's a recording made from the sub just before it sank.
Yes.
Come in! Headquarters! Come in! Headquarters, can you hear me? Headquarters! It looks like a giant fish! No, not a fish! A dinosaur! A giant dinosaur! Headquarters! It's a dinosaur! Come in!
Dinosaur. Play it again.
It's a dinosaur! A giant dinosaur! Headquarters, come in! Headquarters, help us!
There's no doubt he's saying
Emergency!
dinosaur.
A dinosaur!
What's it mean to you as a marine
Dinosaur!
biologist? What do you think?
Headquarters! Can you hear me?
I can't believe it.
Headquarters! Help! Help! It's a dinosaur! It's coming straight for us! Help!
It's a little embarrassing to say, but this is a victory lap. Record All Monsters has been a passion project, and it always will be. But with the previous episode on 1974's Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, I was able to say the thing that got stuck in my craw deep enough to get the ball finally rolling. I'm approaching this episode as not just a victory lap, though, but also as a chance to renew and reinvigorate myself as I look forward to what is coming on the horizon for myself and for Record All Monsters. In many ways, Terror of Mechagodzilla is the perfect movie to reflect on both of these attitudes. The Godzilla series had reached its absolute peak of silliness with 1973's Godzilla vs. Megalon, so it may seem like the next year's film, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, couldn't help but be a little more serious and a little more thoughtful. But if you look at the trends of the Japanese box office in the mid-70s, that seriousness may have been another deliberate effort to follow the trends of the day. Toho was starting to make some blockbusters again. In the US, disaster movies like Airport 1970, The Andromeda Strain, The Poseidon Adventure, and Earthquake were making big bucks. And so it only made sense for Japanese filmmakers to try out the same thing. The dam broke, so to speak, with 1973's The Submersion of Japan, which wound up being the most successful domestic film of the decade in that country. The next year, they had another hit with The Prophecies of Nostradamus, which got so dark as to depict cannibals and mutants roaming the earth in humanity's final days in a post-apocalyptic nuclear wasteland, for about 30 seconds. Once again, it topped the box office, followed by another adult-focused film, Jun Fukuda's heavily violent supernatural spy thriller, Espy, or E-Spy. I've never heard it said aloud. So the winds were blowing cold, and Tomoyuki Tanaka followed with the next entry in the Godzilla series. Initially, he turned to none other than the screenwriter for Prophecies of Nostradamus, Yoshimitsu Banno, director of Godzilla vs. Hedorah, who planned to use the chance to make the sequel that he had hinted at in that film's closing frames. But other Toho brass had different ideas, and since dark and documentary-like realism was in, they plucked Ishiro Honda, the former documentarian, out of retirement and told him to make another Godzilla movie, partly at the request of this upcoming film's screenwriter. Yukiko Takayama, a recent graduate of a non-Toho-affiliated writing academy, won a company-wide contest to develop the next Godzilla film, with her treatment Godzilla vs. the Titans. They had her expand it into a screenplay, which was reworked by Honda to match his idea of what Godzilla ought to be at this point. Additionally, the studio mandated that the movie must feature Mechagodzilla, and be a sequel to that creature's debut. The resulting film is probably the thing most people think of when they think of a Godzilla movie. Unlike the Gamera franchise, the Godzilla movies never quite developed a formula in the Showa era that would guide the direction of the sequels. The sequels are all wildly different from each other for the most part. Godzilla Raids Again is a moody and unfocused plotter. King Kong vs. Godzilla is tongue-in-cheek and spectacle-driven. Mothra vs. Godzilla takes the tongue out of its cheek and adds a dose of dark fantasy. And with Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster and Invasion of Astro Monster, we start to get something like tonal and thematic consistency before it gets thrown out the window as Jun Fukuda tries to balance his action-oriented approach with the demands of the youth market in Ebirah, Horror of the Deep, and Son of Godzilla. Destroy All Monsters feels a lot like Ghidorah and Astro Monster, but this time Honda himself tosses out the tone and makes a completely new kind of monster movie with Godzilla's Revenge to follow that up. Yoshimitsu Banno reinvents the wheel, again, in Hedorah, and Fukuda's next three entries are so different in terms of tone that when I first started getting into the behind-the-scenes stuff about Godzilla movies, I didn't believe that he'd directed all three of them. With Honda at the helm of Terror of Mechagodzilla, it feels a bit like he really did put all of the best qualities of the previous films in the series into a blender and hit puree. Even children figure into this film, as Godzilla intervenes when Titanosaurus is about to stomp on a pair of boys as the final battle begins. Though it must be said that the film doesn't show the boys reaching safety. Speaking of that Titanosaurus, he's a somewhat divisive monster. Introduced in this film, he is a red and orange aquatic dinosaur with fins running from his head down his back, with another on the end of his tail that can be collapsed and fanned out. It seems like most folks think his design is pretty cool, but his roar, it seems like, is what many don't care for about him. His roar is a gargling, warbling screech that sounds a little bit like revving up an elephant. I love him, warts and warbles and all. I don't know if I'm in the minority or the majority, but I do know that the other side of this debate is very passionate. Mechagodzilla returns, and so does Akira Ifukube. While this is generally good news, and it is great to hear the classic Godzilla theme in full bloom, I do miss the funky jazz score of Masaru Sato. Terror of Mechagodzilla is a very good film, so far as the late 70s Godzilla outings go especially, but it didn't put too many butts in seats. And while it was never officially declared a retirement of the character, the low box office ensured that Godzilla would be absent from movie screens for the next 9 years. Well, at least in Japan. 1976 saw the start of a mini-boom for Godzilla in the US that would last for the rest of the decade. We talked a little bit about CinemaShare's two-pronged ad campaign beginning at the Democratic Party's National Convention for Godzilla vs. Megalon, and they wrote the success and notoriety of that film by releasing it again on a double feature with Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, which they released in early 1977 as Godzilla vs. the Cosmic Monster, and as a triple feature with Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla and Godzilla vs. Gigan, now rechristened as Godzilla on Monster Island. In the US, this movie came out in 1978 under two different titles. Terror of Godzilla went to theaters courtesy of Bob Kahn Enterprises, who edited it down for a G rating. And Terror of Mechagodzilla was released to TV by our old friend Henry G. Saperstein, who left the film mostly uncut, and even edited in a 10-minute prologue to catch the audience up on not just the previous movies, but the entire Godzilla franchise, after a manner of speaking. Take a listen.
Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Nobody knows the origin of this indestructible monster, but many people believe Godzilla was some kind of an ancient god. Others felt Godzilla was a prehistoric monster, awakened from a million years' sleep by atomic explosions. awesome creature a threat to civilization. Attempts were made to destroy Godzilla with modern war machines. To Godzilla, these implements of destruction and their tremendous firepower were merely toys. He batted them away and easily destroyed them. Annoyed and angered by this attack, Godzilla set out to destroy the cities. The sound of his screeching roar and earth-shaking footsteps sent thousands running from their homes, fearing for their lives. He crushed all in his path and set the countryside aflame with his fiery breath. All of man's military might was no match for Godzilla. Bullets, tanks, rockets. They had no effect on this giant. There seemed to be no way of stopping this 600-ton monster, as whole city blocks became a raging inferno. Then, from the black hole of outer space, invaders from other planets and galaxies decided this was the opportunity to take over the Earth.
Returning to normal.
But Godzilla, like an animal protecting his home territory, decided to unite with the Earth people in attempting to fight off the invaders. Godzilla's a terrifying monster. Now becomes Godzilla the friend of his ally. To cope with Godzilla, the invaders used monsters of their own. Many fierce battles took place with these frightening monsters. Godzilla was put to the full test of his strength. But in the end, Godzilla and the Earth people were victorious. Other sinister minds from outer space decided that the only way to take over the Earth and destroy Godzilla would be with another Godzilla-like creature. A huge robot monster, impervious to anything. Mechagodzilla. In their first encounter, a furious battle took place, in which Godzilla almost met his match. Godzilla called upon heretofore unknown powers to defeat his mechanical counterpart. And then, he hurled him into the sea.
I feel like this is probably the most appropriate place to end this essay in this portion of the show, with a recap of Godzilla's journey from villain to hero, scourge to savior, enemy to friend. As we draw the curtain shut on this troubled season of Record All Monsters, we're saying goodbye to Godzilla for a long time. However, his influence will still be felt as we examine the genre in his wake. Sayonara. Kyuyu.
Please don't worry. Even if you're a cyborg, Katsura, I still love you. You aren't to blame. None of this is your fault. You shed tears. Then you are human. You have a human heart like anyone else.
Please kill me. Destroy my body.
What?
Inside me's the controller. Mechagodzilla's brains installed in my stomach. Act quickly. To stop him.
Don't be
must.
silly.
You must.
I can't do it. No, I can't do it. Katsura! Katsura!
Mechagodzilla, champion and defender of Earth in The Terror of Godzilla.
Titanosaurus, Mechagodzilla, destroy them.
He holds the front line of battle, while in their spaceships, aliens command a deadly duel. Will the powerful serpent Titanosaurus' cyclone tail and the robot monster Mechagodzilla's lethal rays destroy our Earth? See this ultimate test of power, The Terror of Godzilla, rated G.
Hello, I'm Robert Kelly. Welcome back to Record All Monsters, where we're here with our very special guest, Nathan Marchand of Monster Island Radio and the Monster Island Film Vault.
Yes, the host, the curator of the Monster Island Film Vault, a podcast seeking entertainment and enlightenment through tokusatsu. And yeah, my producer is here to produce this, I guess. I hope you don't mind. I notice your wife is not joining us today.
Yeah, Courtney she had some. Jimmy was wonderful for the most part, but we don't have to talk about it on air.
We don't need to. No. Jimmy, he said we're not talking about it.
And she's not like holding a grudge. She just thought this might be, it might be better if she wasn't here.
Yeah, I understand. Although we were also supposed to be joined by my wonderful friend John LeMay, and unfortunately he couldn't make it either, which is too bad. I love John.
I love John too. When we were initially talking about doing this, not long after my appearance on your show when we were vacationing, yes, I had approached him because I thought I would have this in the can much sooner. And he said, "Let me know."
You would have as well.
Yeah, and he was just like, "Let me know when the record date is." And I just in seeing him around, the internet, I was like, "Oh, I think he's probably I don't want to push him."
Yeah, he's dabbling in fiction now, which is interesting for him. I almost want to talk to him and say, like, "Hey, I've been doing the novels thing for a while. You want some help?" Not that I don't think you could do it, John, but
well, I haven't checked out his fiction yet, just because I have a huge list of books.
He sent me a free copy, which was very generous.
Oh,
of him.
wow!
So yeah, I'm looking for. Yeah, John and I are pretty tight. So I've known John. I met John actually a few years ago at G Fest. And it's a funny story how that happened. Every year I've been to G Fest, I have been on a panel even when I didn't sign up. I've discovered that there was a writers panel run by Neil Reeby, wonderful guy. He's been on the podcast. He's been on the MIFE a couple of times. And I'm like, I got to go to that. Okay, you got to understand. I'd never been to G Fest before. I'd always heard about it. I signed up to go relatively last minute, at least comparatively last minute.
Mm-hmm.
And then got there, went to the writer's panel because I am also a writer. So I'm like, I have to go see this panel. And here I am in the second row. It's the middle of Saturday afternoon. And I am running on about, 4 or 5 hours of sleep and a lot of caffeine. And it's starting to wear off a little. So I'm sitting in the front row, excited for this. And I overhear Neil and John talking about how they had somebody drop out at the very last second. Actually, I think the guy whose book I have, he was the one who couldn't do it because he had other responsibilities.
I see.
So they're like, what are we going to do? And then just kind of as a joke, okay, I get my phone out, go to Amazon, and find my kaiju novella, Destroyer, which you should definitely go buy. And if we ever meet in person, I'm talking to you and your listeners, Robert, I will happily sign it. But anyway, or you can just order one from me and you can get it signed because I think I have copies sitting around.
Well, I mean, you're right here. Do you have a copy?
Unfortunately, no. I'm going to have to... Jimmy, did you remember to pack those in Ubermoger when we started our trip? You disappoint me. Anyway, well, I might have to go grab some on the way back in case we have to go back.
Oh,
to the
that's
island.
fine for now.
Yeah. Or we'll get some Amazon drones to bring some over. But anyway,
Yeah.
so I got the Amazon page out, and then said, "Hey, look, I got a kaiju book." Neil just glances at that for about a second, and then he says, "Huh, get behind the table." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" 5 minutes beforehand, and I just got recruited. What? So I went back there, and he started a panel, and off we went. Now, this panel was Q&A, so it's not like I had to be prepared or anything.
Right.
But still, I did it, and then Neil afterwards said, "That was really impressive. I'm going to have you on next year." And then I've been on that panel every year since.
Wonderful.
In fact, last year at G-Fest, Neil wasn't sure he was going to make it, so I ran the panel. But Neil still showed up because he figured out a way to still come. So he just joined the panel. And when we launched it, I looked at him and I said, "When I left, the circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but a panelist. Now I am the moderator."
Well,
you're welcome, Jimmy.
Well, thank you guys for coming, and I think that serves as a fine introduction for who y'all are and what you're about.
Yeah.
But so we are here to talk to you about a movie in the Godzilla franchise, as we are wont to do. And after this, won't be doing for some time because we're going in chronological order.
Ooh.
We're here to talk about Terror of Mechagodzilla.
Oh yes.
And you jumped when I told you this was the next episode I was working on.
I did. This one is near and dear to my heart because this is my first Godzilla film.
Well, that ties into my first question perfectly. Why don't you tell us about your background with this film?
Oh yeah, I was a teenager. So for a lot of people, I've noticed in the kaiju fandom, they usually start when they're younger. I came to it a little bit later in life. I was I don't know, 13, 14, somewhere around there. And I was visiting my grandmother who had cable TV because I didn't grow up with cable TV.
Oh yeah, me neither.
So watching cable TV at grandma's house was fun because it's not something that I had at home. So I am over in the TV room, the living room, and I'm channel surfing, and I come across, I grew up in northern Indiana, and I come across WGN. Now, you're from Texas, so I don't know if you know what WGN is. Have you ever heard of WGN?
I have heard of WGN.
Oh, you have? Okay.
You put a big smile on my face when you said that. As someone who collects clips of, promos and stuff from around the internet, I have run into them a couple times.
Well, for those who don't know, WGN is a local channel based out of Chicago. So I guess it was included with my grandmother's cable package. And they were running, from what I could tell, it was apparently some sort of like weekend long. This was a Sunday afternoon. Some sort of weekend long kind of marathon sort of a thing that they gave the very obvious name of Oh My Godzilla Weekend. That was not the button I was going for. I was going for that. Sorry.
It worked. It worked.
Brought the soundboard with me too. Anyway, but let's be honest, we've all been making that joke for years. Anyway, I tuned into this, and I remember because this is back when we had commercial breaks on TV, kids. I remember the commercial break, interlude that they would do was it looked like the silhouette of a little paper cutout of Godzilla with some buildings in the background. I said, "Oh my Godzilla Weekend." I don't know if they made it themselves or what, but they were playing Terror of Mechagodzilla. Now, mind you, I came in about halfway through the movie.
Right.
But I kept watching, even though I was like, what is going on? But I kind of caught on relatively quickly. So I got to see all the fun bits toward the end. I know I came in a little bit before Godzilla showed up because I distinctly remember watching Mughal and his right-hand man talking about Godzilla was coming, but he would be too worn out from fighting Titanosaurus to fight Mechagodzilla. So I know it was a little bit before that. And I kept watching the whole thing. Now, what drove me nuts is that started my obsession. I started looking into it more, and then I started buying more Godzilla films whichever ones I could find. I remember buying VHS copies of stuff like King of the Monsters 56 and Megalon. Talk about an odd couple.
Those were everywhere.
Right. Yeah, they were the Good Times Home Video releases. Yep. Sometimes I think I should just track down a copy of that 2-pack just to have it, because I'm a practical collector. When I upgrade, I usually part with the older one. So there's a part of me that feels a little nostalgic for that particular 2-pack. So I kind of want to find another one just to have it, because that was the beginning of my kaiju journey.
Right.
Well, not the beginning, but the next big step in the kaiju journey. But anyway, I was also a little bit obsessed with finding a VHS of this movie because I wanted to see the whole thing. And I will never forget, I went to a... Does anyone remember Kmart? I went to a Kmart and I found some more VHS 2-packs, one of which had a movie that said it had Mechagodzilla in it. And I'm like, oh, that must be the one I saw at Grandma's house. Not knowing
there was
what
another
I know
one
now. So I take it home and I start watching it, and I immediately figure out this feels a little bit different than the one I saw before. And I don't know how long it took me to figure it out, but I think at least 20, 30 minutes in, I'm like, this is a different movie. So on one hand, I was very excited to have discovered a new one, but also disappointed it was not Terror of Mechagodzilla. And I think I'm blowing some dust off of these files, but I think the first time I got to see, quote unquote, the whole movie, and as my friend Luke Giaconetti says in our Destruction Directive, air quotes up to the mic, I believe it was the Scimitar VHS release. And I have the air quotes because it's technically not the uncut movie.
that's the Bob Kahn.
Yep.
The Bob Kahn cut. I have that.
The Bob Kahn heavily censored and awkwardly edited cut.
I collect the VHS tapes, and I try to have I have one of all the Showa, and I'm almost done getting the Millennium.
Right.
Or not Millennium. The Millennium, there's only one.
Right.
But
it's funny that we talk about that, because the Bob Kahn cut has almost turned into lost media at this point. Now, I understand. Even if I had a copy of it, I probably wouldn't watch it, because I'd rather watch either in Japanese or watch the kind of weird Terror of Godzilla cut that was mostly uncut and had the extra 10 or 15 minute prologue at the beginning that was kind of weird. So it's a dubbed version that's technically longer than the original.
That's actually my preferred cut, because I love that prologue. If you have never seen a Godzilla movie, that prologue is
Except it says that the Zillions made Mechagodzilla, technically.
Yeah.
But anyway, so like I said, that one's kind of lost media. The last time I heard it had been released, I know Scimitar put it out on VHS and DVD, and I think the first classic media DVD was that version.
Yeah, the first classic.
So.
Yeah.
And I think that should be relatively easy to find. It's not very expensive if you want to have that version, but it's, like I said, it's just kind of funny how it's, like I said, it's almost lost media now.
Well, and the same has kind of happened with the Terror of Godzilla cut. It's the classic media's previous release was the last time it was on.
I think that was the only time it was ever released, unless you saw it on TV.
I think that's the case because I do remember seeing that at one point as a kid, but it was when it was on TV at like 2 a.m.
Right,
So
because it was a TV cut of the movie. The Bob Kahn version was, they took a cheese grater to that thing to cut it because they wanted to get it down to a G rating.
they wanted to get it down to a G rating, and they were putting it on a double feature.
Mm-hmm.
I think as the B, which means we're looking at 70 minutes, and
I think it's about 80.
Yeah,
I think even the Bob Kahn version is still close to about 80 minutes.
Right. I just mean that they're trying to get it
right.
We don't want this to overshadow whatever the A picture.
Yeah,
is.
and I don't know what it was. I don't remember. I used to know what it was, what it played on as a double feature, but I can't remember now. I know it played the drive-in circuit. In the late 70s. In fact, if you have the original Classic Media DVD, there's a wonderful commentary, not by a bunch of film experts or academics or anything like that. It's like 2 or 3 fans. I can't remember all their names, but a lot of them do work in the fandom. I just wish I could remember their names. I should have brought my copy with me to reference this. There you go. But one of them shared the story of seeing the movie at a drive-in theater as a kid. And I'm like, that just sounds amazing. He talked about when you got to the famous scene of Godzilla doing his fiery charge, and we got original burning Godzilla, which was totally an accident. That they just left in because that looked cool. We had to douse the guy with fire extinguishers 3 seconds later, but but he's coming running, and he gets to Mechagodzilla and just starts pummeling him. And the guy on the commentary said people were honking their horns, which he said in drive-in theater culture is the equivalent of applause.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't blame him. That's probably that might be the biggest rah-rah moment in the entire movie.
Yeah, it's
other than maybe Godzilla's entrance, but we'll get to that.
We will get to that. I don't usually go through the a plot out recap or anything because we work under the assumption here usually that the listeners have either seen the movie or intend to watch it soon. And in that case, we want to build up the mystery. And in the other case, you already know what we're talking about. So go, But this is a sequel, the only acknowledged direct sequel besides Godzilla Raids Again.
Although the first few Showa films would still harken back. Got King Kong versus Godzilla in the Japanese references Raids Again.
Mm-hmm.
Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster references back to Mothra versus Godzilla. Well, and Monster Zero references back. But after that, it got looser.
And it's just kind of there's a familiarity. At this point, everyone's like, oh yeah, I know what a King Ghidorah is.
At this point, Godzilla just has to show up on cue now. That's all it is. They had this is the last of the Showa series, and I don't think it was necessarily intended to be the ending, but Toho was looking to try to keep the series going because in 1970 you had the Japanese film industry crashed.
Yeah,
and the contract system ended. So the landscape of Japanese cinema changed drastically in 1970. Also didn't help that A.G. Tsuburaya died in 1970. Yeah. God rest his soul. But anyway, so everything changed. That's why, for one thing, Toho lost most of its franchises. They had a lot of film franchises before this, and they lost most of them. It's a small miracle Godzilla kept going. It really is. But it just shows you the versatility and viability of the franchise. So, and that's also why in the 70s movies, you had completely different actors
Mm-hmm.
in there. You weren't seeing Harada or Kumi Mizuno or a lot of the Takarada. You weren't seeing a lot of those mainstays necessarily. Although Harada was in this movie, and he was in
Yes.
the previous one, but
And
so the whole.
Kenji Sahara was in the previous one as well, briefly.
That's also true. But like I said, everything was just very, very different. The budgets were getting slashed. They were really getting their butts kicked by television at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Because suddenly, people could basically get a Godzilla movie every week in their TV, on their TV. So, they managed to get a bit of a kickstart with the previous movie, being that it was the 20th anniversary. So they were trying to ride that. That's why they brought Mechagodzilla back. And that's also why they went and they grabbed some people who worked on the series in its heyday. That's why they got Honda to direct. They got Ifukube to compose the music.
Mm-hmm.
They brought Harada back as one of the stars of the film. The problem that you run into is that you have the old guard coming in to help out with this, but you have the new guard that had been used to doing things a certain way in the 70s. So you got a little bit of a clash of sensibilities there.
Yes.
Which makes the movie a little uneven, but I actually find it kind of fascinating because of that.
Yeah, the whole way I was looking at it, because again, we do this show in chronological order, kind of as a developing history. And when you look at things in that way, so this is not just the Godzilla franchise, but giant monster movies as a whole. And when you look at the lead up to this movie, this has all of the pieces that people associate with Godzilla movies. From aliens invading with a monster, to giant robot, to Godzilla's the good guy, the Akira Ifukube score. Like, it is textbook
tragic characters.
Yeah, it's textbook Godzilla movie, which up until this point didn't really exist, and this would be the template for the Heisei movies more or less going forward. This is the ultimate Showa Godzilla movie in both senses of the word.
That's interesting because they didn't have nearly the budget that they did 10 years before this, say with Monster Zero.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I mean, you look at what they accomplished with what they had, it's impressive, which makes the fact that this is one of the lowest grossing Godzilla films in the entire franchise just that much more tragic. And it's not because the movie's bad. I think it's just because the audience had moved on.
They'd moved on, yeah. And then, of course, you look at, like, when this played the Champion Festival, it's not exactly going to be a crowd pleaser for a bunch of 9-year-olds.
Not necessarily. It's pretty dark. It's the darkest one since the original.
Probably.
Although Hedorah's pretty dark.
But Hedorah
was a different kind of dark because it was a different kind of everything.
If you want to hear more about my thoughts on Godzilla vs. Hedorah, check out our live episode.
Yep, I did.
So that this I feel like is just like the you have, if we look at the Showa Godzilla series as a middle school essay, you have the initial thesis statement with 1954, and then you have the middle schooler conclusion at the end of, well, this isn't where I thought we were going, but this is where we wound up. Of Terror of Mechagodzilla. I feel like this is almost a full circle moment.
Oh, in a lot of ways it is.
Yeah.
Like I said, they brought back people who worked in the original film. They brought back Harada, who's playing another scientist. And ironically, he's kind of the anti-Serizawa in this.
Yes. Yeah.
Dr. Mifune, which, okay, I get it. he looks like the Colonel. He looks like Colonel Sanders or Dr. Wiley, depending on your persuasion. That's a lot of prosthetics and makeup.
Mm-hmm.
But if you watch the movie in the original Japanese, the dub makes him sound a bit sillier. But
Yes.
if you watch it in the original Japanese, Harada is taking this role very seriously.
It's a very good performance, and as a dub advocate in terms of what it means for film accessibility,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the physicality of his performance is still very notable. Like you see he's acting with his whole body while not being a ham. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a very good performance in a film of, for the most part, pretty good performances.
Mm-hmm. There's a little hamminess here and there, but it's mostly reserved for the full-fledged villains.
Yes. Yes.
Like Mughal, who literally whips his subordinates for failure. It comes across a little funny, admittedly, but it's supposed to show you how dangerous and dark he is, but it comes across a little funny. Like a little, snidely whiplashish.
Well, like so we have a new monster in this, Titanosaurus, and he's kind of a divisive figure among the fandom. Where do you fall on a Titanosaurus?
I love Titanosaurus. In fact, I got mad at my friend Danny DeManna of the Godzilla Novelization Project because he got the apparently incredibly rare Bandai Titanosaurus figure for nothing from a dude at G-Fest who didn't know what he had. And it made me mad. I didn't know I needed a Titanosaurus until that moment. So it made me mad. And then I tried to look into getting it. That's when I learned how stupid expensive it was. And then I tracked down a copy. I tracked down one of the figures thanks to my friend Jay over at Toku Toy Town. Shout out to Toku Toy Town. And he even cut me a little bit of a deal so that I could get that. So I could get the Titano along with the 1975 Godzilla. So they are sitting on my shelf back on Monster Island along with a Mechagodzilla 75 figure. So I've got the whole set right there, and it's beautiful.
Wonderful to hear.
But Titanosaurus he's one of the most underappreciated, I feel like, kaiju in the Toho pantheon. He's still relatively popular on the island, but especially since he's not under mind control, so he's actually nice to people.
Yeah, he's quite chill.
He's a very chill monster, but I always loved him. He's a throwback again to the 60s. The pre-Ghidorah, monsters that
just
Godzilla would fight.
Just a big dinosaur.
Just a big dinosaur, but he's a wild one. Funny thing is there scientists apparently discovered some fossils that they named Titanosaurus, but now I think that those fossils are being disputed.
Yeah, it was a South American sauropod, I believe, and is probably synonymous with something that was already discovered.
I mean, I did read an essay in the original Godzilla compendium from a guy who was a paleontologist who wrote about Godzilla from a paleontological standpoint. He said, "Oh yeah, I found some fossils and called them Gojirasaurus just for fun."
Mm-hmm. And that is a sorry, I'm a paleontology nerd. That is a coelosaur, I believe, ancestor of a Tyrannosaurus, but a smaller one.
Yeah. So yeah, I love Titano. Titanosaurus is such an interesting monster to me because there's such a duality with him. When we're first introduced to him, he seems scary and aggressive. And especially if you look how he's shot in this, it's got the moody lighting because it's underwater. You don't quite see him all that much. And when he emerges from the water, it's a low angle shot that would become synonymous with the genre going forward.
Yep.
Thank you, Shusuke Kaneko.
Yes.
And there's even some water that gets on the lens, which is actually kind of cool. And then that last shot of him smashing the submarine underwater, and he does that one final roar, and it looks like he's supposed to be underwater, so I think it's supposed to be bubbles or something like that, but it looks like
Yeah.
steam coming out of his mouth. Like, he seems horrifying. And
What's a-
then we find out, no, that's not how he normally is. And then he parallels Katsura,
Yes.
because she is by nature a gentle and kind woman who is being forced to be, basically a horrible killer, if you stop and think about it. So it makes Titanosaurus tragic along with Katsura.
Yeah, and the way he compares to Mechagodzilla in terms of what is his, like, even the during the final fight, which is one of my favorites, where we get all sorts of ridiculous things like,
I know, it's a really dark movie that has some pretty ridiculous fight choreography.
yeah, well, like the lip biting and then throwing Godzilla. I love the I love that they bury Godzilla alive and then Titanosaurus dances on his grave.
I dance on your grave.
Puts his hands behind his back and just starts auditioning for Riverdance right there.
He even bends over and starts playing with the dirt. It's like,
yeah.
I'm like, wow.
And just that casual cruelty that, is
Almost
not
snorting like a horse.
Yes. Oh, and I love his cry. I know a lot of people really hate it, but I mean, he's an underwater dinosaur thing. Like, of course he's gonna sound weird. Like, what is something like that gonna sound like in real life? You tell me and come up with something better.
I mean, the last couple issues of Kaiju Ramen magazine have had a very extensive 2-part article about the subject of Titanosaurus and the science of Titanosaurus. So if anybody listening to this, if you haven't read the Kaiju Ramen magazine, you're missing out. Go check it out. I'm actually on staff for that magazine.
And it's a good magazine, and I don't just say that because I've had something published in there and have something coming up in one of the upcoming issues. No, and yeah, it's genuinely very good magazine.
But you were saying,
what I was saying was, I wanna close this segment of the show, but talking a little bit about Katsura.
Such a great character.
She is a wonderful character. One of the first. Well, this was the first. We go over it a bit in the essay portion. This was the first Godzilla movie to be primarily written by a woman.
Right. Well, when I've said that, I've gotten a little bit of pushback for it. There was a very early draft of Son of Godzilla that was written by a woman, but almost none of it carried over.
Well, none of it carried over, and Yukiko Takayama is her name. She wrote the screenplay, and it is essentially her screenplay with edits by Ishiro Honda.
Mm-hmm. They did have to take some things out for budgetary reasons, which she was okay with.
So this is her story, and you can tell in the fact that, the women characters, not just Katsura, but who are in it, even if they're just briefly, have a lot more depth than, this is my girlfriend and she's a black belt, or this is my photographer and she wishes she was a real reporter. Like, they're people, they're living people with things going on behind their pretty faces.
And there's also a lot more emphasis in this compared to, especially the 70s films, I would say, on relationship.
Very much.
Yeah.
And
especially with Katsura and how she relates to, well, really the men in her life, because there's her father, there's I can't remember his name, but
Ichinose.
Ichinose, played by the guy who was previously in Megalon, which is hilarious.
Yes. I know the pronunciation's wrong, but I always call him Ichinose because it sounds funny.
It does sound funny, but her relationship with him because they have a budding romance that ends tragically.
Yes.
And also with the male aliens who are constantly manipulating her. I look at that now, knowing what I know now about Japanese history, and I can't help but wonder if, with this being written by a woman, and she was a young woman too, like her early 20s.
She had just graduated. She had just finished grad school.
Yeah. Yeah. So she was a young woman. And I'm looking at it thinking, this is the mid 70s, So I feel like, much like the original movie was showing Japan in a transition culturally because of the love triangle, where you had the Emmy, who's in a very traditional arranged marriage eventually with Sarazawa, but she's in love with Ogata.
Yeah.
And she's wants to be with Ogata, but they basically have to keep their relationship secret. Because that's a much more modern Western idea of courtship. And I feel like with Katsura, if this is kind of playing into that a little bit, but particularly when it comes to women's place in Japanese society in the 70s, because there are men who are manipulating her. That's what the aliens are doing. They are gaslighting her basically into doing their bidding. They made her a cyborg, and she can control the monsters. She controls Mechagodzilla. So they're always gaslighting her, telling her that she's just a cyborg. She is powered by, she's basically, the only things that she should feel are vengeance and hate and all of this sort of stuff.
Right.
Her father, she has a complicated relationship with her father, because her father was a good man, and he has succumbed to a desire for vengeance because of for understandable reasons. The guy was rejected by academia because he said, I have the technology to control animals. And everyone freaked out, said, we don't want to have anything to do with you. And his wife, her mother, eventually died. He fell into poverty, and then the aliens come along and they offer him a chance to prove everybody wrong. So he takes it, but in his ambition, his daughter technically died and then became a cyborg. And then by the end of the movie, that one scene when he goes to Katsura after she's had some more surgery, and he's just standing there, and he's like, Katsura, what's become of you? And he realizes this is all his fault, but now he's in too deep. He can't get out now.
Yeah.
And then Ichinose is actually a positive male relationship for her, but she can't fully open up to him, even though she wants to. So there's all of this tension for poor Katsura the entire time. And she doesn't 100% know how to do, because she's getting pulled in all these different directions, and struggling even with understanding her own humanity. And it makes her story just so compelling. And this is I might add, a pretty comic booky science fiction monster action movie meant for children.
Yep. And I feel like that's one of the big strengths of these movies, that they are able to put this sort of thing in pretty sneakily for the most part. And like, I loved this movie as a kid. I didn't pick up on any of that. I did pick up on Ichinose being everyone disbelieving him about his relationship with her because she doesn't show up to anyone else. But that was about it. In the terms of that aspect, that was the human conflict to me as a child. And there's just so much.
You didn't get to see the part where she shoots herself to stop Mechagodzilla.
Yeah. So on that delightful note, we're gonna switch over segments. We're gonna take a quick break, get something to drink, have a snack. Jimmy, do you go to the bathroom?
He's a little offended that you're implying that he's not human or something.
Well,
Last I
it's,
checked, he's not a robot. He just sounds like a robot because he needs a new freaking microphone.
I just like to tease him.
Yeah.
Again, especially after what he did, which we don't need to go into.
Yes,
any
we
more
don't need to
detail.
talk about that.
But so when we come back, we are going to play our game show segment.
Ooh.
Which I did when I got you on. Add a couple of questions that I think might be up your more some of your literary background.
Ooh.
As well as the same kind of dumb stuff I normally talk about. So, when we
yes, Jimmy, we've gotten a little used to quote unquote dumb stuff. The shenanigans that we've gotten into on the island.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, that's, I mean, we're definitely going to go back, just maybe not right now. That said, when we come back, our game show, my Canadian robot girlfriend goes to a different school.
I need to see this movie.
All right.
No, I need to see this anime. That's an anime.
Man has constructed a technological terror so extreme, nothing can stand before it. Witness the terror of Mechagodzilla. Can Godzilla prevail against his mechanical clone?
What's happening?
Or has mankind once again fallen prey to the sins of arrogance? Alas, a third party joins the fray. Beware! The spacemen of the third planet. What sinister scheme do they plan to unleash? And what of their secret weapon? The rampaging behemoth known as Titanosaurus.
Hello, welcome back to Record All Monsters, where we are here with Nathan Marchand of Monster Island Film Vault. What is your title over on Monster Island, by the way?
I had several for a while toward the end of last year, and if anyone, well, I'm sure most people have noticed that the podcast episodes haven't been coming out in the feed as fast as they normally do. That's because, well, the board and my former boss Cameron Winter decided to work me to death, so I couldn't get things like, the podcast versions of the episodes out fast enough.
Yeah, my listeners don't know anything about delayed episodes.
But currently, I am back to my old title of film curator and I guess occasional radio host on there. Although now Jimmy and I are doing that remotely from Uber Mogura, which thank you for giving us a good spot. Recommending a good spot, I should say, to park that thing when we came to visit you here in Texas.
Oh yeah, the part. One thing Texas has, it's Texas. You have an idea in your head, you're probably right. But good parking.
Have a few friends in Texas,
Good parking.
Actually, not just a few short days ago, I was visiting my friends over at the Cellcast who also live in Texas.
Oh.
Yeah, we talked about Tron Legacy because they're an animation show and they already did the original Tron. And I said, if you're going to do the original, you got to do the sequel. And I want to be on for it. So we had a good time. So this is perfect. But yeah.
So let's get into our game show segment, which is called My Canadian Robot Girlfriend Goes to a Different School.
Seriously, that's a manga waiting to happen. And it might be based on your life? Of course it is.
Are you going to play along with us, Jimmy?
Oh, sounds like you will.
Okay. Alrighty then. Let's get going. There's some confusion about who Katsura is for a little while in today's film, especially regarding her relationship with Ichinose. I get big, I have a girlfriend, but she goes to another school / lives in Canada vibes off the whole thing. So that got me thinking about our game show segment. Look at it in all of its majesty. This game
It's
is
wonderful.
called This game is called My Canadian Robot Girlfriend Goes to a Different School, and your job, dear Nathan and dear Jimmy, is to answer in the affirmative or the negative when I ask you if a particular fictional character had either an invented or robotic significant other.
Ooh.
If you win, you will be issued a standard robot of your preferred gender to do with as you see fit.
that got weirdly Westworldy in there.
If you lose, you will be modified into a standard robot to be used as seen fit by someone for whom you are the preferred gender. You signed the contract. You already agreed to this, so don't complain to me.
Jimmy, I don't care if that happened to you once, all right?
All right. Question 1. That's going to be fun to edit. Question 1. Did Bart Simpson's 4th grade teacher, Edna Krabappel, ever have a fake boyfriend?
I'm going to say yes. And Jimmy agrees with me.
All right. Well, she did. Though she didn't invent him herself, Mrs. Krabappel had a whirlwind romance with Woody Wilson, who, by some coincidence, looked just like hockey legend Gordie Howe.
If I knew more about hockey, that would make sense. I am not Canuckian enough. Apparently.
If that episode is from season 4, it's called Bart the Lover, and if you watch it, they will fill you in on who Gordie Howe is in a very funny joke I find very funny. And I'm not even that much of a hockey guy, despite living in Canada for a year.
I have friends in Canada, and they make fun of them all the time about their bacon.
All right, question 2, and right now the score is 1-1.
Ooh.
Did Fox Mulder, absolute madman and FBI special agent from the TV show The X-Files, fall in love with a realistic robot woman named Diana 2, who said she had corroborating evidence of his wider investigation into the international conspiracy known as the Syndicate?
Okay, here's the thing. There's a lot of detail in there that would lead me to believe that that's true, because the way you make a lie effective is that the more details you put in it, the more real it looks. However, you're clever enough to throw in enough details to make me think that. So obviously, can I drink from the cup in front of you?
Truly, you have a dizzying intellect.
Yes, Jimmy, I know. Thank you. I'm glad somebody finally acknowledged it. So yeah, this is definitely a Sicilian levels of conundrum here. So what were the details again? It was synthetic, syndicate, Diana 2, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Diana 2. Gonna phone a friend. I'm kidding. You need like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire music playing. I did that once to Michael on Kaiju Weekly when we were playing a game. But I'm gonna say no. He says yes, though.
All right, well, Jimmy, you are wrong. He did not. But I do feel like this was a missed opportunity. That why didn't the X-Files ever give Mulder a robot girlfriend?
Because Scully.
She's only one of the best characters in television history. Okay. So,
Jimmy.
2-1 in favor of Nathan. All right. Here's where we start getting... Anyway, in weird fiction pioneer E.T.A. Hoffman's 1816 short story, The Sandman,
Mm.
Main character Nathaniel falls in love with two women, Olympia and Clara, both of whom try to dissuade him of the belief that the Sandman, in the form of the scientist Coppelius, murdered his father. Were either of these women robots?
Well, oh, that's the question. Were any of these women robots? 1816, correct?
Yep, 1816. E.T.A. Hoffman, same guy who wrote The Nutcracker.
Okay. Work with me here, Robert.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I know the term robot was not invented until the 1920s, 1930s by a Russian playwright, Mr. Kapek.
Mm-hmm.
So robots as we know it, not I would say no, but if it's the guy who wrote The Nutcracker, and I definitely need to find this story now, I would be willing to believe that they are synthetic, although they wouldn't have been calling them robots. But it's like I said, it's The Nutcracker.
We are playing a little fast and loose with the terms robot,
Right.
android.
So then I am going to say yes. And so is Jimmy.
You are both correct. Olympia was in fact a robot made by another scientist as well as Coppelius. I may have spoiled the big twist in a 203-year-old sci-fi story, but it is still worth reading.
It's interesting that comes out just a few short years after Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Yes. I love E.T.A. Hoffman. He's a big weirdo.
He wrote The Nutcracker.
And he writes a bunch of big weirdo things, and everyone knows him from The Nutcracker, which everyone knows of, primarily the ballet. But you get down and dirty into some of his stuff, and you got a guy who I feel like sometimes gives Lovecraft a run for his money.
Yeah. So was this before or after Nutcracker?
I'm not sure on the timeline of that.
I'm actually trying to Google that right now. Oh, I love how I put in Nutcracker and I get a tool. The Nutcracker.
Hoffman.
That is... Well, no, this is the play. This might be the play because it lists the Nutcracker as 1882.
Okay, so they were...
But that's the play.
They were published in the same short story collection.
The Nutcracker and the Mouse King?
Yes.
There you go. Okay, because I was thinking of the ballet. That's why.
The collection is called Kinder Marchand. Children's stories.
There you go.
And so that collection had both the Sandman and the Nutcracker. The Sandman was also adapted into a ballet called Coppelia.
The Sandman and the Nutcracker sounds like either like a band, like a duo, like a musical duo.
No, that's a drive time
buddy
DJ
cop movie you've ever seen.
Those are drive time radio DJs. We're here with the Sandman and the Nutcracker.
Coming soon to Monster Island. Because let me tell you, when I'm not on the air, there's some other shows that are on, and they're kind of weird.
It was interesting.
We have one hosted by a Kappa.
We were when we were driving from our hotel, the resort, to the studio for our appearance. Yeah, we got a taste of some of that.
All right.
Okay.
All that matters is I'm still winning. What's next?
3-2. Question 4. Sometime in the late 12th century, a volume of 12 romantic poems was published. It survives to this day and is known under the title The Lays of Marie de France. It contains an Arthurian tale titled L'Envol. When Queen Guinevere seduces the titular knight, he rejects her by saying he is currently bound to a fairy woman who is extremely jealous. Is he telling the truth?
Diving into some Arthurian lore I am not as familiar with. Which it's Queen? It's Guinevere, and who's the knight?
L'Envol.
L'Envol.
He is a minor player.
Mm-hmm. A fairy, you say?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Or some sort of fey.
Right. I'm going to say yes, but Jimmy says no.
You are correct, sir. Not you, Jimmy. Nathan.
Oh,
Uh,
hot dang.
the
Yeah.
unnamed fey is real, but their relationship is contingent upon his keeping it a secret. When he tells Guinevere, he breaks their agreement, and the queen accuses him of seducing her to King Arthur.
Ah, okay.
Will the Fey woman come and testify to King Arthur and save her errant lover's life? Find out when you read L'Enval, only in the Lays of Marie de France, available in a shady PDF download near you. I love fairy tales and like medieval literature and stuff. It's
Oh yeah, great fun.
One of my great loves.
Mm-hmm.
And I love whenever I can sneak a reference in here.
This is why I enjoy your show.
All right, so you have gotten 4 out of 4 correct so far, and Jimmy, you have gotten 2 out of 4 correct.
Hey, no need to get jealous over there, okay?
So,
jelly.
Nathan, you have a chance to join the elite company of those who have won the game show with all questions correct on their first appearance.
Hot dang!
You would join John LeMay, and there's a couple others who I don't have off the top of my head. I used to have a list here, but I cleaned recently, and I can't find it. So,
hey, joining a league with John LeMay is always good.
It is funny though. Before I knew I was going to be able to book him to be a guest on the show the first time, it was for the Veron the Unbelievable episode, and most of the questions were sourced from one of his books. So, there wasn't really a chance that he was going to lose that one.
And if he did, I'd be worried.
So, final question. The middle grade graphic novel Ghosts by Raina Telgemeier is about Katrina and her family moving to Southern California, where she meets a boy who helps her deal with her little sister's terminal illness. Was this boy one of the ghosts of the title?
Ooh. You know what? I'm going to say yes. And Jimmy's going crazy over there and agreeing with me.
Well, you both are wrong.
No!
Oh, you still win the game show, and you still beat Jimmy, who will have to be modified. But no, he's just a kid, no older than my son. That was a reference to the end of the famous train sequence in Spider-Man 2. I must say that man's son probably had a son of his own, might have been divorced, had a mortgage, and was thinking about buying a convertible.
I would have expected you to do better, Jimmy. I mean, you're dating a zillion woman now. Hey, at this point, it's public knowledge, okay? You got exonerated thanks to Raymond, okay?
Oh, you guys. Well, thank you so much for coming down. I know you're on your way to do some big things.
Yeah, well, we got kaiju to wrangle. It was put into my new contract with the board. We had some escapees. They went back to their home countries.
Nice. Well, enjoy Denmark.
Yes, we will find the Tilikai.
And say hello to Ogre for me.
Yes, we will.
She's near and dear to my heart. Ogre is as an Irish diaspora. A great big dinosaur that destroys London. Of course.
I know another. Would you say Irish or Scottish?
Irish.
Oh, okay. I have a Scottish diaspora who would probably appreciate it too.
Yeah. We just need a Mexican kaiju to get in there and mess up the French. And,
well, there are the monsters from Gareth Edwards' monsters.
That's true.
They hang out in Mexico.
Well, with that said, have you got anything to plug? I'm sure you do.
It's one of my spiritual gifts, sir. Yes, I mentioned the Monster Island Film Vault already. If you enjoy Record All Monsters, you will be right at home in the Monster Island Film Vault. We also take an academic approach to all things kaiju and tokusatsu. Although we do things a little bit differently than you do. If you're going chronological through everything, we do things in fun little themes. So when I launched the show a couple years ago, we talked about the Kong movies. And I would have finished that right before Godzilla versus Kong originally was supposed to come out. And then they delayed it. So I had to make filler. And then they delayed it again. And I had to make more filler and start season 2. And then season 2 was the Year of Gamera, which was a board mandate because I only wanted to talk about 4 Gamera movies, and they told me, nope, all 12. Ah, dang it.
Nah, there's some good stuff in there.
Yes, we know. You were one of the Kennys. Jeez. We get it. You helped Gamera save the world from a space squid, and that's how you got a job at NASA. Anyway.
And no one is we're not minimizing your contributions, Jimmy.
Just the Kennys. But anyway.
Hey, this is a pro Kenny space, and you know that.
Yeah. And then season 3 was Amerikaiju. So we've been talking about American-made kaiju movies because, yes, Elijah Thomas of Kaiju Conversation, other countries besides Japan can make kaiju movies.
Yeah, and I think you did an episode on Colossal.
Yes.
That had a very charming couple on as your guests.
Oh yeah, they were wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. We were talking about our spirit kaiju and all that fun stuff. It was very zen. But anyway. And then I also I do other podcasts. I am also the co-host of Henshin Men, a podcast about the appreciation of Japanese superheroes and their high-flying and high-kicking adventures. I started that with my friend Travis Alexander, formerly of Kaiju Weekly, and now the main guy, co-founder of Kaiju Ramen Magazine. Mm-hmm. That will be wrapping up soon. I brought on a new co-host named Drew Dodgen of the Cellcast. He's helping me finish out our coverage of the original Kamen Rider from 1971. And then, unfortunately, the show will go on hiatus because I can only do so much. But I'm hoping to revive that podcast at some point or another. And then I am also the co-host of The Power Trip, a journey through the Power Rangers franchise with Michael Hamilton. Both Henchman and The Power Trip are members of the Kaijurama Podcast Network, which is a lot of fun. And we spent all of season 1 covering every season of Power Rangers. And now, as we are in season 2, as we are waiting for 30th anniversary material to come out, we are talking about Super Sentai and some Power Ranger comic books.
All right.
And I got one more.
Okay, go ahead.
I am also a cast member in Scyther Podcast's Power Rangers, the audio drama. I play Rita's brother.
Ah!
And then to make things extra weird, Rito one time called into the show and hijacked it for about a minute.
Ah! Well,
because of course he does.
You know what? Good for him. I'm sorry it happened to you, but good for him.
Snarky bonehead. But anyway, so yeah, and Scyther Podcast also does an X-Men audio drama, and I was just cast in that, but that episode is not out yet, so I can't tell you who I'm playing in that. All I will say is that it is a character who can legitimately reference the Power Rangers show, and that I play Rito.
Well, we're all looking forward to your portrayal of Magneto.
X-Men, welcome to die.
Welcome to die. That's going to be a t-shirt.
Welcome to die. And then if you want to, I'm also, like I said, I'm also a writer. If you want to check out my writings, go to my author website, which is in desperate need of an update, at nathanjsmarchand.com. Yes, I have 2 middle initials. And no, they don't stand for Johann Sebastian.
Uh, well, once again, my listeners don't know anything about websites needing to be updated. Um,
Oh, and
thank you.
follow Jimmy from NASA on Twitter at NASA Jimmy. There.
Yeah,
My contractual obligations are fulfilled. And he's happy. That's all that matters.
Well, we really appreciate you guys coming on. We hope to have you guys on again.
I would love to.
Next season, which this is the last main episode of the season.
Woo! Season finale.
Giving some future sight here. Next season we will be covering some stuff in your Henshin wheelhouse.
Ooh.
Season premiere is going to be Super Inframan.
That's the season premiere for season 4 for me. Oh my
gosh! Maybe we'll have to cross over.
Ooh.
And we're doing Ultraman Story.
Ooh, I haven't seen that one yet, actually.
That's the first Ultraman film written for the silver screen, and that wasn't just. It was still heavily compiled from stock footage from the show, but it wasn't just stock footage from the show.
Mm-hmm.
And near the end of season 3, we'll be looking at Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie.
Oh my gosh, if you have me on for that, that'll make 4 podcasts where I've talked about that movie.
Maybe I'll just go cut clips from your other appearances.
Just edit me and I'm stock footage.
All right.
Well, Ultraman Story would be really fun.
Well,
and Super Inframan is just caffeine-induced insanity. So
that is a party. That movie is a party.
That's putting it lightly.
So we're gonna go ahead and say goodbye to this segment of the show, and I'll catch y'all up with some housekeeping. I know I did a little bit of that here. On the other side of this sound effect. Alrighty. So we did it. We did it. We finished off the 21 movies of season 2. We will, when this goes live, I will put out a ballot for the Rammies, and then Courtney and I will put out an episode next week, or around about then, going over the nominees and what we think about it. And as soon as I can, I'll have the Rammies award show and ceremony out for your viewing or listening pleasure. This episode has been a long time coming, and it has been fighting with me every step of the way, including the editing, which is sound files were corrupted. And thank you to Nathan, our guest, who was able to send me a backup file, because somehow my initial files got corrupted. And he saved the day. So, with that said, see you in a little bit for the Rammies. We are kind of pushing for a Rondo nomination. There's been a lot going on this year. I think the recommendations for the nominations are closed, and I don't know if the ballot is out yet. But I really want to hear at the end of this season, thank you so much for your patience with everything that's been going on. And I'm taking more time to work on season 3. I'm not going to be putting it out until I have 10 episodes finished, and then the next 11 after that. I will take a break after the first 10 to make sure that the next set are just as good and we don't have another slowdown like this. This season was racked with personal and practical problems, tech problems, high points like the live show, personal favorites like Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla and Godzilla's Revenge. We're I'm very happy with how this season went overall in terms of the episodes that were produced, how they turned out. I made sure that I was happy with each one of them. And I hope you all were too. So hopefully next season, which I'm pushing back, part 1 to hopefully release in the fall. I've already started pre-production on that. We got research going on and writing as well. So that's it. That's it for now. And we'll see you for the Rammy nominees announcement and a couple of some things. I thought between now and then, remember that monsters are your friends.